And hey there, hi there, ho there, and a gracious good Saturday morning to you. Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Cardinal Couple Radio Hour podcast, where we bring you the joy and excitement, among other things, about UofL women's sports. We certainly have a lot to talk about today, a lot of things going on as we get ready to take a little bit of venture into the good and bad of what's going on the Belknap campus these days. But hey, we got four in house today, not the four you normally expect. To get to that in just a second. Jared is monitoring us from his financial obligations, where he is exchanging two 20s for a 10 and also denying any loans for buying Priuses. So good work there, Jared. But got a lot of fun things going on today. We got Case Hoskins in the house. Case wrote the article today in the Cardinal Couple column, and hey, there's a little bit of COVID going on, bud, huh?
Yeah, I was wondering yesterday what I was going to write about with a midweek game, and then you can't preview the game for tomorrow. I was like, man, I just got to figure something out, and then boom, news fell in my lap. I felt like Jared earlier this year.
And that's a horrible feeling for anybody, so good work there. Jeff McAdams in the house with us today. He's been vainly trying to get our newest writer online and on board. He's also been considering moving to Texas so he can be closer to the Tesla. Yes. Right. Hello, Jeff.
Howdy. Yeah, struggling with getting a Google property to talk to a Google property. It's you think this should work better, but no, things technology not in our favor right now. I don't know.
Very, very pleased to bring back to the broadcast. We had her in the old days at WCHQ with her timely comments and whimsical remarks. She's back with us again. Hello, Daryl. Daryl Fast with us. How are you doing, my friend?
Good morning, crew. I am eating some hash browns and you all can't even see it.
Oh, so envious. Man.
You just got this picture up of this vertical girl.
Horizontal. She's horizontal.
Yeah, standing sideways.
I am floating horizontally.
Daryl is among us. Look up to the skies and you will see her. Yes. All right, real good. As for me, just trying to maintain and hang in here. Was getting fired up about going down to the KFC Yum Center on Sunday. Yeah, not so much anyway. We'll get into that. But unfortunately, things happen in this 2020 COVID-themed world we're in right now. So, but this is the time of the show when we go to Case Hoskins to bring us the scheduling and Twitter information that is upcoming for us. So, hey, Case, you're on, babe. Go.
Yeah, scheduling a lot thinner than it already was, actually. So today, football versus Wake Forest in the final game of the season that has been rescheduled approximately 12 times is kicking off at noon. I don't even know what channel. There's not one listed. There's a live video link, so it's somewhere.
I think it's ACC Network, Case, if I remember right.
That would make the most sense to me, or at least ACC Network Extra, if nothing else.
Or in our case, the Comedy Channel.
Well, but this game,
yeah, looks like
heard some other previews about it. You know, with the number of, or Dave Clawson, Wake Forest coach, just coming out and saying they're not in game shape. Like Louisville is just going to be I don't know. This could be a comedy of errors. Yeah. Every Louisville football game this season has been a comedy of errors, at least for one team. So maybe this will be one for both teams.
Yeah, it is listed as ACC Network. So.
Right. Perfect. So flip that game on after we're done with the show.
Can we get Pam and Debbie Antonelli to call it? That would be.
There might be as many turnovers in this football game as there is in a typical basketball game.
Yeah.
You know, Debbie be talking about offense the whole time.
Yeah, she would be. Beth Mowens has been doing a lot of football. She's great. Happily take her on there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Maybe we would get Katie George on the sideline.
Yeah.
All right, so that's got us to that. What else is going on?
That's today. Tomorrow, still listed on the calendar, but obviously not happening. Women's basketball versus North Carolina has officially been postponed. I put postponed in quotes in the article today. For my purposes, I'm just going to assume every postponement at this point is canceled until someone says otherwise. So nothing on the calendar for tomorrow. Men's basketball gets back underway on Wednesday. They're taking on NC State in the Yum Center at 7 o'clock. That one's on ESPN. It'll be men's basketball team's first game back since their COVID shutdown. It'll be their conference opener as well. And it comes, I guess, two full weeks. It just conveniently comes 2 full weeks after they shut down. Women's basketball scheduled for a game against Florida State on the ACC network at 8 on Thursday. That game is probably not going to happen, as best as we can tell, unless they can determine that the shutdown is for a false positive case. But I assume they would have confirmed that before announcing to the public that everything was closing up shop. If they follow the same calendar as the men, they will not be back to limited practice until next Saturday, which would probably put the Miami game that's the next day at risk as well. But can't know anything about that. So the only thing on the calendar is today's football game and Wednesday's men's basketball game. And Thursday's women's basketball game that may or may not happen. One of the ways that you can see if that's going to happen is by following along on Twitter. You can follow the Twitter bar on the right-hand side of the Cardinal Couple site, or you can follow all of us. My tweet is at Best Case Scenario, Paulie is at Cardinal Couple, Jeff tweets is at Jeff McAdams and at Card Couple Radio. Daryl tweets is at Daryl Faust 4, if I remember correctly from back in the day.
Yeah.
And
I'm private now, though.
You're what? You're private? Oh,
I'm
you
private,
got it.
so you have to be approved.
Yeah.
Always smart in these trying times. Jared tweets is at Mr. Anderson Jared. Almost mixed up his.
Right, like I used to do.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what was up with that. I've said it a ton of times. I don't know how I almost got it wrong just now, but that's what it is.
There you have it. Information to get in touch with us, to follow us on, and also in case bringing you up on what could happen, what was scheduled to happen, and what probably won't happen, as we'll go ahead and just kind of jump into that to start things off today, where we found out yesterday that the University of Louisville women's basketball team had paused their basketball activities, and the North Carolina game, scheduled for Sunday, had been postponed. This is because of all team-related activities due to a positive COVID-19 test and accompanying contact tracing measures among individuals within the program. Vince Tyree breaking that news on Friday. And a positive test followed by, of course, the 17 quarantine that they have to do, contact tracing within the Cardinal team. The Tier 1 individuals, and I have to kind of figure out what that was, but that consists of student athletes, coaches, team managers, and staff, and Case Hoskins. So the team is adhering protocols within the ACC Medical Advisory Group report there. So to dummy it up for everybody, we ain't playing y'all.
If they're considering me a Tier 1 individual, I can go ahead and throw any water on the rumor that I am the positive case. It's not me. Just to clarify.
I've got a tier for you, Case. One tier right here. Corner. So let's go ahead and bat this around here a little bit about this. I was surprised, obviously, by the news, but I don't know. Let's start with you, Daryl. You're the new gal on the block here. What were your thoughts and reactions to what happened?
You know, before it was announced, I was thinking how grateful I was that it hadn't hit our program yet. You know, Coach Walls has been pretty, strict on making sure this season happens. We've seen his tweets and stuff, so this just kind of sucks. It's horrible timing. I really thought we would be one of the last teams that it would affect. But like I said in the post and before that, I think the team is going to be playing like every game is the last, and here we are at this point. Got a wrench thrown in our gears, and now we actually do have to pretend like every game is the last.
Case and I were arguing before we came on the air about when we could possibly make these games up. Case, just how did this hit you? What are your thoughts about it?
It's unfortunate. It, it's not entirely surprising. I think that the men's team getting their bubble broken kind of put into perspective that this was kind of right on the edge. We've seen it in most of the teams that have participated in fall sports, actually. At UofL have had to deal with this in some capacity. So just add women's basketball to the list. It is a little bit interesting. I think following the women's team and other UofL sports, they're among the last to be hit. I have a team that, the Reds were stricken during the MLB season. I don't really follow in NBA, and that was in a bubble anyway, so I'm not too worried about that one. Men's football got it, volleyball got it. Now women's basketball. The Seahawks are the only team in the NFL who are still unafflicted to this point.
You just jinxed them, dude. What are you doing?
No, I didn't jinx them.
Russell
Everyone else
Wilson is coughing and sneezing as we speak.
Everyone else has already said this, so I cannot possibly put any more jinx on them than already has been done.
Doesn't matter. You're the one to say it in this context.
They did put somebody on the reserve COVID list last week, but it was for a quarantine and contact trace and not for a positive test, because what insanity. Sports are insanity at this moment. So I guess to put a bow on what my thoughts and reactions were to women's basketball getting hit, it was, kind of a matter of time, in my opinion. And here it is. Unfortunate, of course, but it's just the reality of trying to do what sports organizations are doing at this point.
And Jeff, maybe you can elaborate a little more on this. I think it's traditionally like a 5 or 7 day waiting period, or it can vary, I guess, depending on the program and the protocols from when this is announced to when teams can actually get back in the gym and start practicing and stuff like that. Kind of clears that a little bit up on that for us.
I don't have certain information on that. Every organization handles this a little differently, I would expect. UofL, I think, particularly in recent years, has become a pretty transparent organization on a lot of things, and so I suspect they're a little more forthcoming about this information than some other athletic programs might be. I've really liked this direction in UofL athletics. I think it's a good thing, positive. But I'm not sure that lets us compare very directly from program to program how they handle it. I suspect this came out as soon as they had any sort of confirmation and said, hey, here's what it is, here's the situation. We can take that and take what we know of medically of this virus, which, I'll always throw the caveat on there that I'm not a doctor, so don't take my advice for sure, but we know this thing can have an incubation period that may be up to 2 weeks. Starting to believe that it's less than that based on the news I'm hearing. So, maybe we can get back at this in a week. We'll see, week or 8 days maybe. We'll see what happens. I think you have to look at the data, do the testing, and just be careful about it. And want everybody to be safe and healthy, and do the right thing. Don't let pressure to play endanger people here.
Daryl, let's look at this. The timeline on this thing. The team got tested before the Wednesday game at Duke. They got tested when they came back on, I would assume, either Thursday night or Friday morning. So, is it something maybe they picked up in North Carolina? What are some of your thoughts on this?
Well, I was going to ask, does anybody know if we are flying or doing only bus travel?
I know they've tried to keep it to bus travel. I suspect for any games that may be quite a distance, like I think when they went up to the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, that may have been a flight. But I think in general they're trying to keep to bus as much as they can. I think, what did Wall say, 5 to 6 hour drive we would be willing to do by bus?
Yeah, it's going to be more than that, because you're going to have to, have stops occasionally, and that. I always thought that if I could get from Louisville to Greensboro in 7 hours for ACC tournaments and such, I was doing pretty well. and then
Well, you driving in a car is a little different than the sort of bus sort of trips that they're taking. They're dealing with really nice buses. They can go a long way without
How
needing
do
to
you know I
stop.
didn't take a bus down to Greensboro, Jeff?
Yeah, Paul, aren't you pedaling your vehicle?
Flintstone style, feet out the bottom.
I was on the party bus, you know. I had to go with the bells and the whistles. It's an old converted ice cream truck. No.
Jared said that he thinks they flew. And I guess after I asked that, I thought about how, Coach Walls has talked about being in close proximity and like keeping games around us, but I guess it's more difficult when it becomes ACC play. But yeah, I think if that's where we left our bubble and came back with it has to be somewhere in that trip.
Yeah, it's hard to point the finger at one specific incident or occurrence and say, this is where we got it. Because as we know, COVID doesn't select. It just says, I'm out here. Oh, you caught me. Congratulations. Move on.
Yeah.
So hopefully, and the main thing I'm hoping for here, guys, and Daryl, is this, that it doesn't affect any of our players to the point where hospitalization, oxygen, ventilation, incubation, any of that takes place. Fortunately, they are all finally tuned to conditioned college athletes, and hopefully it will be on the players' side, nothing except mild discomfort and sneezing and coughing.
Just curious, if a player does contract COVID and has to go to the hospital, does the program fund that hospitalization?
So I don't know the details on this specific thing. The way that I've spoken to some folks about it in the past with injuries, that whatever insurance that the player or family has would pay their portion, but that UofL does have secondary insurance coverage on all their athletes. This is not required by college athletics departments, by the way. But UofL does do this, where they have a secondary insurance that will pay whatever the family or individual's insurance does not. So I suspect this would be covered under that, but I don't know for sure on that.
Yeah. I just worry about the long-term effects. And Jared just pointed out that Asia, she still felt long-term effects months after, she was in the clear, which makes sense. I mean, it really does do something different to people's bodies that we've never felt before.
UofL is in an interesting position. I think they're pretty forward-thinking as far as, healthcare coverage goes, not just for their student athletes, but for their students as well. It's a requirement to have provable insurance, and if you do not have it, you can get access to it through UofL to even play in intramural sports. I know this because I was sent to the hospital for an intramural injury in my freshman year. But yeah, so UofL is definitely not want to be on the hook for anything, and it may not be so altruistic. It may be a little bit of realism on there, and if they require insurance and provide some insurance to some extent, they give themselves a little bit of liability protection for anything that is to happen to someone on their grounds or in service to their athletic department.
We haven't had any actual player comments or tweets that I've seen. Maybe you all have seen them, I haven't, about the malady hitting the campus right now. Jeff Walls had a very, I think, just very basic statement on it. We're obviously disappointed, but unfortunately, this is a part of the 2021 season. We're following proper protocols, monitoring everything closely, and look forward to getting back out on the court soon. So saith the coach on that. And Coach Walls has warned us, and it seems like anytime he gets asked a question about what happened with defense in the second half or talk about Dana's game, he'll start out that comment with, "We are just happy to be playing right now." And if you listen to some of his responses on talk shows and other things like that, that's his first opening blanket statement. We are just happy to be playing right now. Well, he's got to change his tune a little bit now, because guess who's not playing right now for a few days? But, let's take a look at it realistically. We know that the NC game is out. There's no doubt about that. That's gone. See you later. But how about the next game up in the schedule after that, FSU. Is that too soon to jump back in, fellas? I'm thinking it is. Thoughts on that?
I'll let Mr. Scheduling go first. I think he kind of commented a little bit already, but yeah.
Yeah, I think Florida State's probably out. It's less than a week after their announcement. I think the only hope would be a false positive to come out, but I don't think that UofL would have let loose any information or put forth a release or put an official pause on the program if they had not fully confirmed and vetted out their situation. So yeah, I'd say that game against Florida State is out because.
Not to mention, I don't think Florida State wants to travel here just to be told it's not happening. I think they'll cut that off before we give them a chance to.
Yeah, I think we see an announcement, like Daryl said, by the end of the weekend.
Yeah.
Those teams are going to come to an agreement.
Yeah, I suspect they're chatting already. So.
Trying to find new opponents. Florida State's trying to find a new opponent now.
Yeah.
Oh, Jeff Wallace has got a list of 25 different schools that they can certainly call if they need to, for sure. Yeah.
Maybe he'll share it with.
Our schools.
Maybe he'll share it with Florida State.
Which leads me to bring the discussion topic, and I'll let you guys kind of bat this around the table if you want. Is it time maybe just to stop this stuff until 2021? Make plans to go to a bubble somewhere and just play the rest of the schedule in a bubble?
Well, Coach K wanted to, and people ridiculed him for it. So instead, he just canceled all his non-conference games. I mean,
did he wait until he had a positive? I don't think so. I think he waited until he was losing.
There's some question there. Yeah.
We saw it work in the WNBA. Okay, less teams, certainly. But consider the scenario. Let's say you've got 25 people associated with the program that would have to be in that bubble. That's players, team, staff, coaches, yada, yada. You take that times 15 games, that's 400 people you got to put up somewhere in some city, someplace. My suggestion is go to Greensboro and do it. There's hotels, scads of hotels within a 2-mile drive of the Greensboro Coliseum. You've got a couple practice facilities in there. And then you play 4 games one day. You play 3 games the next day. Somebody gets a bye for those 2. You have a day off. And then you do it all again. 4 and 3 day off, 4 and 3 day off until you're completed with the schedule. Am I crazy here? Tell me about this, Jeff.
I think that would be feasible, like if we planned that instead of starting the season and then, tried to, hurry up and get that figured out because we realize that teams are becoming positive and not being able to play games. I just don't see that being feasible within the next month. Now that we're already in this thing.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. This is something that needs planning. If you want to try and do something like that, I'm not sure you can do that on the fly in the midst of all of this going on. And I think there are risks of bringing in other issues if you try to do this, right? So NBA, WNBA, they've played in bubbles and it worked well, right? But you're also asking an awful lot of the people involved to do that, to be able to do that, particularly if it's for any sort of extended period of time. And if you're saying, okay, I want student athletes to go in here that are not being compensated to do that, that brings up some big questions about amateurism and all the things again that I think the NCAA would like to just kind of avoid altogether. So, yeah, I mean, it's already issues that are raising, and I think the NCAA is a little uncomfortable about it for good reason, I think. But yeah, I suspect they don't want to open that can of worms.
Yeah,
it is part of their job, but like you said, student athletes, they still have to be a student first, and I think putting them in North Carolina kind of takes away from their student in Louisville,
Yeah, and I think the NCAA would twitch if they heard you say that's part of their job, right? I mean, because that's the whole problem here, right?
I have no confidence in the NCAA whatsoever. I think it's got to be an ACC move. You tell the NCAA this is what you're doing, and the ACC makes the call because the NCAA obviously couldn't put 2 to 3 together if they had a a calculator.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay.
I think it's the same difference though in that if you start talking about these student athletes having a job, and I agree with you, Dale. They're this is the way that they're paying for their college education, but I think that really calls into question the whole notion of how the NCAA has approached amateurism. And I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest. So I would love to see that discussion happen personally, but I suspect the NCAA would like to just sidestep that. So,
Even putting aside the amateurism conversation, even though it is probably at the forefront of what people are thinking of as, you're asking student athletes to be in this situation, and it's what people have been thinking about throughout the college football season, as Al Blades of Miami announced that he's out with diagnosed myocarditis at this point. But if you put aside the conversation of amateurism, you also have to look at the conversation of fairness. If the NCAA tournament is ostensibly something that everybody has equal access to if they play their way in and do all of this, and then you have big Power 5 conferences that have money and can afford to do things like put the entire conference in a bubble to try and play a conference season, but the Big Sky can't do that, and so now the ACC is putting themselves in an unfair position where they would already probably get the vast majority, or not vast majority, a plurality of teams in the NCAA tournament, and now they're putting themselves in an even better position, because if they bubble up, then you've got almost the entire conference playing 20 games against the regulation that you need to play 13, and a lot of teams, I think, are going to be scraping for 13. There's never been a bigger divide in the conferences to say this conference has money and can afford to do things that you just can't, and that's bad luck for you. Sorry,
Yeah, I see that, and Jared weighs in a very valid point here as well. He says these student athletes still have classes and families, and don't forget they're primarily a student before being an athlete. So.
And that's essentially the amateurism discussion for the NCAA. But I got to tell you, here I am. I'm a manager of network engineering, right, for my day job, right. If my company said to me, "Hey, we want you to come live in this bubble for a month," I'm not sure I'm saying yes to that, right? And I am getting a paycheck for that. So, it's that's a challenging situation, and it opens up multiple cans of worms to try to sort this out. So, I don't know.
So we shall see as this plays out. Obviously, there were no immediate answers. There were no guarantees, and certainly with the COVID virus being something that has been so prevalent in not only athletics but our world right now, stay tuned. We're going to turn the page and see what's next. So that's about the best place I think we can leave the whole discussion on that. Certainly, we do hope that any players down at UofL staff, any of the coaches, anybody else who might be possibly at risk here, come out okay, come out fine, and they do all right.
Oh, on that, I was thinking it's probably pretty clear that it's an athlete, right? Because if it was a coach or an adult, you probably know, because they'd probably put it out there. They might not, but they probably would, based on what other schools have done in these situations. And also the contact tracing part. If there's only one positive test, the coaches aren't supposed to interact with each other or the student athletes in what would be considered a close contact. If they are, they're breaking protocols, and I don't think UofL is doing that. So I suspect that when you add those two things together, you have a pretty strong chance of it being either a student athlete or a manager who would also be in close proximity to the players during practices and things, and would have close contacts with roommates and stuff like that. So I don't think it's a staff member or a coach personally, but that's entirely speculation.
I really think about the mental roller coaster this has on a lot of people involved, mostly the players at this point, because just think if you're Dana Evans right now, and your whole career, your goal was to win a national title. They ripped that out from underneath you last season, and now the potential is there to, you might not even get there. And that's just the anxiety it must cause, and like trying to expect these players to still remain, motivated and inspired to win a title when you don't even know if you're going to play next week is just really a battle for everybody.
Yeah, I think there's some real points to it. And we go back a little bit to some of the discussions we had back in March, April, May, started timeframes where we were talking about more towards the onset of COVID-19, right? And in my work environment, right, the team that I work with is completely remote, right? We had discussions as management folks within my organization talking about this is not normal remote work, right? You're not working remotely. You're working remotely during a pandemic, and that's fundamentally a pretty different thing. So even teams like mine that were already completely remote, we're struggling with, and are still to this day, let's be fair, struggling with existing in the mental and emotional roller coaster that is life in a pandemic for, looks like it's going to be a year plus before we have any realistic chances of getting some semblance of back to normal. This has been an emotional roller coaster for fans. How much more so is it for the players, and particularly the players, as probably the peak amount? And I think exactly, Daryl, you look at like Dana Evans and her, she was looking for such a great season and a great tournament run last year, and then now you're also calling into question this one. They have been granted an extra year eligibility if they want to use it, but I don't think Dana would particularly plan to, right? I suspect she wants to go on to the WNBA and start her career, but it's an emotional roller coaster and mentally taxing to have to work through these issues.
And imagine being the coach trying to keep them motivated.
Right.
Like, hey, we still have goals. We're under protocol right now, and we're not being able to see each other, but you need to keep working out and keep your strength up and your endurance up. But I mean, if I was on the end of that phone call, I'd be like, come on, coach, like everything's being taken out from underneath of me, and just keeping players motivated seems like a tall order.
I think your degree of motivation right now for Louisville would be the fact that you're number 2 in the nation, you're 5-0, and everybody looks at you as being a potential Final Four team. That would be significant motivation, I think, for me if I was a student athlete to go for it. But you're right, take a look at the programs that maybe have only played one game so far because of the COVID concerns, or the teams that are 1-4, trying to say, gosh, are we going to get a chance to come back and do this? I don't know. And Jared makes a good point, too, about catching it or coming in contact with people who are positive. Or if you're that person that tested positive that caused the program to shut down for several days, there's a large amount of guilt that goes with that, you feel, even though it's beyond your control, honestly, because COVID doesn't pick and choose. It's just another level of pressure that are on the players right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's taxing from emotionally, mentally, and to some degree physically. Even if you're not, tested positive, if you're not experiencing symptoms of these situations, it changes the way it has changed the way all of us, hopefully, if you're doing what we should be doing in this pandemic, have been living our life for 9 months now, basically, 8 or 9 months. So it can't be understated. I feel like we're going off on kind of a little bit of a rant session about this, but it's something that feels relevant and meaningful at this time, like it did back in May, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Also brings to mind and to thought when the vaccines are starting to be distributed and such like that, what type of priority will student athletes receive in getting their shots?
That's a good question.
As opposed to healthcare and first responders, or like as opposed to other students?
Like relative to other students, I think is what that.
I think relative to society as a whole, we know who's going to be first here. We know this, yeah. It's going to be your frontline folks. It's going to be your senior citizens in nursing homes and things of that nature. But After that, where does it fall? Does maybe the student athlete get priority over the guy who's majoring in engineering and planning on starting, working for Ford next semester? Huh?
I think that
How do you choose? How do you choose?
you have to be careful because the NHL is currently finding themselves in a tad of hot water when reports came out that they're planning a major private purchase of vaccines to give to their players and support staff, and everybody's like, really? Like,
It's a little tone deaf.
it's not to say that they're not trying to do what's best for their industry and their sport and their organization, but it's like, come on. Everyone's been waiting for this for the same amount of time. It feels a little entitled to it's not that they don't have the right to do that, and they're more than welcome to. They're a private organization, they're buying from a private business, doing all of this. It's just there's a sense of entitlement that everybody else is like, well, why are you more important? And I think that you run into this situation where those are professional athletes, and you roundabout make your way right back to the amateurism conversation of saying, well, if these are just student athletes, why are they being elevated above other students who are being asked to be in the same position with college? But
or other students that have other reasons that,
risk
from
factors.
A public health perspective, have higher risk factors. Absolutely, and should be a higher priority for whatever reason. Many reasons could be that. So, yeah, I agree.
There's a lot of breadcrumbs on this table, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But they'll get it all straightened out. We have trust in those who make those decisions, and certainly hope that it can be done with the main thing here not being something where money buys you privilege here, but that everybody's given a fair shake in this thing, okay? With the priority going to our frontline people, and even the medical and dental students that are training to be those frontline people. I think that's very important as well. So we shall see what we shall see on the virus, and yeah, let's hope that the vaccine works. Yeah, I know I'm lining up for it when it comes out. But we do have good things to talk about. It's not all gloom and doom here on the Cardinal Couple Radio Hour podcast. We did have basketball earlier in the week. We kind of led into the UT Martin Louisville game when we ended our show on Saturday. We had some predictions out on that. The Cards won in this 85-67. Kind of a shaky first quarter though, Daryl, as they were only up 14-15. But we had a young lady by the name of Dana Evans kind of wake up and play some good ball, huh?
Yeah, I feel like the first couple of minutes have been shaky in almost all the games. I think it just seems like a little bit of miscommunication. It's not the defense, it's the offense. Some sort of rhythm hasn't been able to get set right in those first couple of minutes, and it's a little frustrating. But once they do start to, get on the same page with each other, it's really exciting basketball. I don't know about you all, but I just feel like this team is I'm going to say it, I think they're better than last year's team.
That's a common sentiment with a lot of people I've heard talk about this team. I'm going to say it's a little too early to tell, but Cases is a team that ended up shooting 41.2%, and people were disappointed about that.
Yeah. You can't be too mad at it. Looks like they have 44 listed here in the final, but I think that
the wrong stat, my bad. Yeah, 42%. Okay, I got that.
Either way, I think people look at high-profile shooters. Particularly, Dana Evans has become the star of the team, right? And everyone's paying attention to what she's doing. Kiana Smith and Haley Van Lith shot 50% combined, but Dana Evans was a tad under 50%. Still shot more than 45%, but people see 9 of 20 and 2 of 6, and they're like, "Oh wow, that's such a scary number." She still scored 24 points, folks. Like, it's not terrible. People see that we shot 63% against DePaul and expect that to be the rule and not the exception. When anybody who thinks that shooting above 40% and pushing on 45%, anybody who thinks that is not good is being a little bit I don't think they're being quite so genuine with their complaints, especially when you hold the other team to about 10% less shooting than you.
This was a return of Sagan Robbins to the KFCM Center.
Yep.
Left the Cards to go to UT Martin. And I think she came in and did a fairly good job. Got into a little bit of foul trouble there, but she showed in her 25 minutes, I think, that she had a pretty good skill at helping run that offensive set for UT Martin. Played some fairly good defense. I think she was matched up against Dana a lot of the game, and so she had that experience going forward. Not that it helped her or anything. Dana went 26 points. But
that's a huge heaping helping of mixed bag there. You know, you have some familiarity, but it's Dana Evans too. So,
your thoughts, Case?
Yeah, if you're looking at the stat sheet and wondering what the heck I'm talking about, it would help to know that I was looking at the Duke box score and not the UT Martin box score.
Duke,
So
UT
now that
Martin,
we're on the same page,
right, literally,
did shoot 42%. Dana Evans still did only shoot 50%. So people are looking at DePaul and thinking, "Wow, we shot so great." But you know what? It's fine. Don't get in a tizzy about a plus 40 shooting percentage. It's fine.
UT Martin had 2 second chance points in 40 minutes.
Oof.
2.
Wow.
That shows me that the
Definitely
Cards were
outsized.
rebounding pretty well, and the Cards were playing defense pretty well. And I think the defense has been one of the areas that hasn't really been discussed a lot in the Louisville success this season. Everybody points to Dane. Everybody points to the great play out of our freshmen. Everybody points to the way that we've got a deep bench on everything that can score at will. But this defense isn't playing a very, very bad game of basketball at all, Daryl.
No, they're not. And I wanted to say something about Dana while you were talking about her. I just feel like Dana is a different person this season. Yeah, she's the head of the class. She's the senior, but she is bigger than anyone on the court in my eyes. I could watch her run around the court and I just feel like she's getting touches. She's leading the team. There was this one point in Duke, right at the end of the game, where I can't remember who it was, but there was a foul called on UofL, and the perpetrator kind of argued a little bit about it or laughed at it, and they showed Dana for a second, and she told her to stop complaining about it. It's like, this is something that's not going to show up on stats sheet, but she told her to stop complaining, like, and made a face at her like, no, we don't do that. And I thought that showed more maturity than anybody on the court. And it's just, I feel like, I said it to Cindy the other day, that I feel like once they took away last season, that all of the spirit and energy from the senior class that we lost, the basketball gods put that into Dana. And now Dana is the spirit of Kylie and Bianca and Jazz and all these other players that didn't get to put, give their last hoorah in the tournament. And now Dana is like the embody of all of those this year.
And let's face it, trying to absorb Jazz as a spirit is going to overdose just about anybody, right?
That sounds like a full-time job.
Yeah.
Better pack your lunch for that one, that's for sure. And Dana's even come out and said this, and she said it on post-game interviews, things like that. She goes, I know that I have to be the one to get things started if they need to get started. I'm the one who's got to make the defensive stop, or I'm the one who has to drive into the lane and hit the basket, or rattle off the back-to-back threes to get this team fired up. She said, it's on me this year.
Wow. So she gets it started if it needs it, and she'll finish it if we need it.
And she's done both, yeah, absolutely. So I do have to point out, though, that we're getting very, very good play out of the rest of our players, and I'm so impressed with the freshman case, these freshmen in Cochran, in Van Lith, and even, Marissa Russell doesn't play quite as many minutes, but she's still going in there and making an impact, and she's just a freshman as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Russell not getting a ton of time. She only played 4 minutes versus Duke, but against UT Martin made the most of her 11 minutes. She picked up
3 for 3, man.
6 points on 3 for 3 shooting, 2 rebounds. Unfortunately, 4 fouls in 11 minutes, but you kind of expect that from a freshman to some extent. But yeah, you can't complain about Van Lith and Cochran. We've waxed poetic about them so far this season, and they've deserved it. Just 2 for 9 against UT Martin from Van Lith, but she still managed to get to the line, shot the most free throws on the team, and still ultimately ended with 10 points and 7 rebounds, 3 assists. It was the first game and only game to this point. Well, actually, no, because she did it against Duke too, in which she out-assisted Dana Evans, which is good to see. I mentioned after that DePaul game there were some assists that were going to start landing when more teammates got on the same page. So good to see that she's getting involved in the passing game as well, and then reduced her turnovers. And Olivia Cochran, we talked about how Maisha Hines was always a walking double-double. I think that Olivia Cochran is working her way towards being in the same situation.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you take a look back, against UT Martin, she had 10 rebounds, only 7 points, but she made up for that when she went up against Duke and ended up getting a nice little effort of 11 points and 12 rebounds. I'm noticing, though, maybe it was just a one-game thing, but the rotation seems to have tightened up a little bit as we've gotten into conference play. Daryl, are you seeing what I'm seeing here?
Say it again.
The rotation has tightened up.
Oh, yeah. I am for sure. Like you said, Olivia, Haley, we got the Elizabeth Balagoon and Alana. I am so impressed with the freshmen, Haley and Olivia. I can't wait to see seniors of those two because just like Dana, I could watch those two, at both ends of the court and be entertained with how much they're moving, how far ahead I feel like they are already. Haley had 29 minutes, wow, which is more than Dana on the court. Olivia had 19, Elizabeth Balagoon had 19, and then Alana had 13. And I feel like that's the best lineup at this point.
Yeah, Smith getting some time. Obviously, Liz Dixon, Jeff, I think, has really come in and embraced her role of coming off the bench and coming in and providing quality minutes, and is really getting it done. And she's not trying to break down the backboard anymore when she puts the ball back up after a rebound. Jeff, been very impressed with Liz.
Yeah, it's really Liz has played some good minutes in support and coming off the bench. She and Olivia Cochran make a real pair. Let me tell you, kind of a 1-2 punch going on here. I kind of think we should probably have Sarah Hammond, Jude Schimmel, and Asia Taylor come in and give some of these players a class on how to catch spectacular, unexpected passes from a left-hander, because I think that's going to be a challenge for the next few years again. So, they're doing great. A couple of passes from our spectacular freshman from Washington State were clearly a little surprising to some of the other players, so we need to work on that. But it's great to see them contributing and doing well, and they're doing well. They'll get used to that with a little bit of time. So
the comparisons, as we mentioned earlier, are already about this being the best team in Louisville women's basketball history. Okay, yeah, they're great. They're good. I'll give you that. There's no doubt about that. Watch them play if you don't believe me. If they're the best yet or not, though, I think it's a little too early to actually make that broad, sweeping statement yet. I think you have to let this thing play out. I remember how high we were on this team last year until all of a sudden we kind of had a little trip, had a little stumble against Ohio State and Syracuse. Of course, we also played the USA basketball team in that stretch too, and they were a pretty good group, and they took it to us pretty well. So let's kind of wait and see what happens with this squad. Moving on to the Duke game, this one was a game where they were down there, and then my first impression was, boy, Cameron really got out the cardboard cutouts, didn't they? They were everywhere in that stadium. That was amazing.
The banners.
Yeah, I was looking to see if I saw anybody I knew in those, but no,
Their end zone had a huge banner with a girl with a sparkly face on it. That's intimidating if you're standing there.
It's just amazing. They could have maybe gotten the horizontal Darrell and floated her on the other end of the court, right? A game where we mentioned tightening up the rotation. Yeah, you got actually a total of 6 cards. Only played 7 minutes or less in this one, as Walls stayed with Dana 39 minutes in this game, taking her out in the last minute to let Nia Green on the court, and also Kiana Smith 30. You take it, Haley 37. It is a tightening of the rotation. Did Walls feel the need to do this because they made a run at us at the start of the second half, took our 13-point lead, trimmed it down to 6? Was he just trying this and maybe we'll try something then the next time the Cards get out on the court a little bit? I'd like some discussion on that a little bit. Something that some people have mentioned as well. Why did he tighten it up pretty dramatically against Duke?
Yeah, I think there's just some natural tendency to do that throughout the season. And Duke is a, contrary to the Duke of years past, has a very good on-court coach from the sounds of things this year. So Kara Lawson in her first year in the actual coaching ranks, but clearly she knows the game well. She's and knows the X's and O's and can guide her team in that. There's still a struggling team a little bit, but some great potential there, a lot of talent. Normally when we play Duke in the past, it's you've had a great recruiting coach, but not so great on the court, in my opinion. So a bit of my hot take there. I think this is a little bit natural as the season goes on. I think it's a little bit natural when you have a team having some degree of success in some aspects of the game. We'll say that. Obviously, the score was still ended up pretty lopsided, but to kind of focus on the players who are executing and doing well. We've heard Jeff Walls talk about it in the past. It's as much about how the players do in practice as how they're doing on the floor. So there's some lack of visibility into some of that from us as fans and commentators. But you can't argue with the results. That's for sure.
Case, what do you think of the idea of Kara Lawson calling up Becky Burke and having her come in as a voluntary 3-point coach for the Duke Blue Devils?
I hate it.
We do have to play him again. John with Darrell. Don't do that yet.
Yeah, no, yeah. After a second game.
Yeah. 1 of 16 is
not great.
Bad.
Yeah.
I thought that the performance by DePaul after their previous games was 4, but yikes. And the thing with this Duke situation is it wasn't even just one person out there jacking up shots. They were 1 of 16 and nobody took more than 4.
Right. Spread it around. And none of them could hit. Yeah.
It's a stellar Cardinal defense.
Yeah.
They had 9 people out there, and out of those 9 people, they had 6 of them try threes, 7 of them try threes, and they just wouldn't go. Was looking, and you were kind of almost praying for them there. Come on, hit one at least, give the announcers something else to talk about besides you all missing 3-pointers in this game. But then, in the worst case scenarios, we could have got Kara Lawson out there to try a 3. That would have been pretty cool to see her rub that on the court. Duke continued to finish 3rd last year. Didn't play too badly in the ACC conference. Had a strong run at the end. Total revamp of the program, new coaching change, everything like that. That the Cards, I think, built themselves a very nice confidence level. All of a sudden to see it go flat now. Hopefully that'll remain when Louisville gets back out on the court action and see what happens there. I'll tell you right now, I definitely think we're a number 2 team in the country. I got to wonder about Stanford a little bit. Somebody tell me why Stanford's number 1 or number 2 right now. Somebody tell me why.
Because Coach doesn't like to be number 1.
We can start there. Is it because of Tara Vanderveer and her long years out there with the Stanford program and supposedly all the great things that she's doing and continuing to do? Is that what's getting them the vote number? I think it's a West Coast bias myself. I'll be the first to say it.
I don't know that I would say West Coast bias, but
West Coast bias in basketball.
Right, exactly. Particularly women's basketball. Yeah. I think there is, however, a bias, almost an institutional memory, let's call it, of teams that have had success in years and even decades past, and in that they do, I think, get a little bit of benefit of the doubt. Now, I don't want to undercut Stanford's quality, the quality of their team this year. They're a good team, clearly, obviously. I have not seen them play extensively, so I can't really comment on it heavily. I don't know if they're a better team than we are. Maybe they are, but I do see the rankings in women's basketball where teams that have been traditional powerhouses in the sport have had better response in rankings than teams who are relative newcomers to it. It's not just women's basketball. I think probably there's some truth to this in men's basketball as well. I also think, from my volleyball background, I think it absolutely happens in volleyball. So this is one of the reasons I kind of keep up my a little bit of tongue-in-cheek anytime I'm talking about rankings, because I do think there's a little bit of a tradition bias. Let's call it a tradition bias in pretty much all of the sports rankings. Probably football too, for what it's worth.
If it was tradition, wouldn't you vote for U of L over Stanford at this point? Just because it's, Louisville, I feel like, has had a better showing in the last decade than Stanford.
In the last decade, but not before that. In decades previous to that, Stanford was a dominant team. So yeah, I'm literally, I think you got to look 3 and 4 decades of history to kind of understand this bias.
I'm not a big Pac-12 after dark person, so I can't say whether this is warranted or a little overblown, but the Pac-12 as a whole is getting a lot of love. You got Stanford at 1, Arizona at 6, Oregon at 8, UCLA at 11, Oregon State at 15. Those are the kind of numbers that you're used to seeing from the ACC or leagues like that, and I think that is kind of elevating Stanford a bit, just to say, they're in the league that has all these ranked teams. I think if if the ACC had as many ranked teams as the Pac-12 does at this stage, then Louisville's probably number 1 over Stanford. The resumes are very similar. Stanford beat Cal Poly by 68 points. They beat UNLV by almost 50, and then they came out in their first conference game last Sunday and just beat the crap out of Washington. Washington is not what they were with Kelsey Plum, but it's still a conference game where they came out and just absolutely dominated. They're going to get tests really soon. By the end of the month, they're going to play UCLA and Arizona, and then they got to play Oregon at the beginning of January. I mean, their lumps, if they're going to come, are going to come very soon, and Louisville is going to have to be poised to take advantage of that and not slip. What I'm really concerned about for Louisville is if they do come back and play that Miami game, they're going to be playing it on no practice. And that's a concern. I think that Jeff Walls is concerned about that. I think the team should probably be concerned about that. Is Louisville better than Miami? Sure, probably quite better, but you would like to have practiced some before having to play after a long layoff like that. So I think best case scenario for Louisville is going to be to cancel that game, frankly, to protect their record, even if you try to reschedule it later on.
True point. Since we probably won't have a game before we get on the air again, I'm being pessimistic here. Maybe I'm not going to do the closest to total score for anything. Maybe we get in a Thursday game, but I doubt it. What I'm going to do is end kind of with this question for each one of you. Give me 2 teams in the ACC that scare you right now when Louisville plays them. 2 teams in the ACC that scare you. I'll go ahead and start right now. My 2 may be dead on, obviously, but I'm going to say North Carolina State, and I'm also going to say Syracuse.
Those were mine.
Yeah. Daryl, I saw you typed it in. No.
Nah. That's what I was going to go with, too. So we're on the same wavelength. Even if we even make it that far, Paul.
Yeah. That's the key. Can we
Those
get
games, I'm looking at the schedule. It's January 17th, and then we played Syracuse twice, February 1st, and Valentine's Day. So, yeah, I'll just keep my fingers crossed that we make it that far.
you and me both? Case, any difference on those?
Well, if we play Miami, I'm listing them as one of them. If we play that game on Sunday, and 2 Sundays. But if you take that out of it and just say from a team perspective, probably going to go NC State and Florida State if we're still even scheduled to play them. Frankly, I'm not sure that we are. If this game Thursday gets canceled, I don't recall the schedule off the top of my head. But, games against Florida State are just weird. Louisville has always had an issue with them since joining the ACC, more so than Notre Dame to some extent, which has been weird. I'm not scared of Notre Dame, by the way. But just those games against Florida State are always barn burners, it feels like. So I'd probably say they're one that's always going to worry me, even regardless of what changes between the teams year to year.
And they are a good, strong team this year. Even with Sue somewhere else sitting the season out to take care of her elderly infirm mother, they're still a very tough team. Jeff, we all seem to be going on the same train here. You got a ticket for it, or are you going to go somewhere else?
So I mean, NC State, like you said, is the obvious answer. But I think there's some good discussion there and some good offerings for secondary ones. Syracuse certainly is definitely, and Florida State, and even Miami a little bit. I'll throw another one out there that hasn't been mentioned that gives me a little bit of pause. I think we're a better team, but I want to keep an eye on Georgia Tech. Noel Fortner's doing some great things there, and I think this is one of those teams that every time you look at them, they're like, wow, they're better than last time I looked at them. So, keep an eye on them.
That's a good point. And a lot of down there's having a heck of a game for this season from Nell as well. So a tough team indeed. That's going to roll us around to our final thoughts of the show. I'm going to let you guys kind of think on yours a little bit. Jared has already typed his in. He's moving away from women's sports. For a brief moment, Florida men's basketball player Keontae Johnson collapsed on the court against FSU today and has been transported to the hospital. They did choose to continue the game, and of course, best wishes from him to Keontae and the Florida men's basketball program. So we always hate to hear about something like that for sure. But hey, Daryl, you're the rookie on here right now, so we're going to let you start out final thoughts for us. What's on your mind now?
I guess I'll go with maybe switch from the women a little for a second. I guess today's the last day for football. Men's senior day. They've been through a lot too, so hopefully they get the win. And good luck to everybody, and especially Des Fitzpatrick. I mean, my gosh, that guy has been here for 10 years and been through how many coaches in his career. I just hope he has a good showing today. And I hope that the women get back into a routine soon, because getting a little spoiled there with that team.
Yes, indeed. Jeff, what you got, bud?
Academics. Today is the virtual commencement for the winter sessions for UofL. I'm going to shout out a few players that we know are graduating. We don't have a comprehensive list, but just ones we've seen. From volleyball, Mellon McHenry is finishing up her degree. Piper Rowe is graduating. Soccer, Jared chimed in earlier with Amina Ekic and just now Amari Hopkins. Those are ones that we know of. If anybody else knows of others that are graduating, let's shout them out. I think it's worthy accomplishment, and like to cheer for them off the court as much as on, right?
Absolutely, you do. 100%. Case, bring me something.
Yeah, a little bit of sad news. UofL posted this today, acknowledging the passing of Louis Sonny Bass, member of the UofL Athletics Hall of Fame. His name is one of the names on Bass Rudd Tennis Center.
I was going to say Tennis Center, yeah.
Played for the football team in 40s and played 2 seasons on the basketball team as well. Did pass away today, or Friday, sorry, from COVID-19. Obviously, he was 99 years old, so goes along with that. But a sad day for UofL athletics in that sense. So just passing along well wishes to his family and those affected by his passing.
Certainly a man who contributed not only with his ideas, but also with his wallet toward a lot of things that on the UofL campus. And certainly it hurts to lose a legend. And he certainly was one down there.
Reading a bit more, the bronze statue, the Cardinal statue outside of formerly Cardinal Arena,
Mm-hmm.
that is funded by him and his family.
Oh,
They paid
cool.
for that, so.
Yeah, and he was very influential in helping Don Feitmeister get that playground going too there on Floyd Street as well. So
Fantastic.
certainly his legacy will live long, I'm sure, on campus for Cardinal friends and Cardinal students and Cardinal fans.
Mhm.
Final thoughts from me here. I'm just hoping that we can get things going here where we can continue to play basketball on a regular basis. You always hate it when things come to a stop. But let's not forget, in the midst of all this, and even though we depend on athletics right now, especially more than ever, to help keep us entertained and enthused and solid behind something, that these are student athletes, and their health and concern is certainly something that we should put the top priority on, besides any type of stats that they put on basketball or any other fields of endeavor. So keep that in mind. They're students. Remember back when you were a student, and I think that'll help you put into a little more clearer context. All right. Well, we don't have Jared here to play the euphonium for us. Daryl, sing us one of your favorite songs to get us on out of here.
Oh, Lord, I can't do my karaoke voice this early. I need a shot of tequila first.
That can be handled. We can take care of it.
So,
It is noon.
I hear you've been enjoying the new Jack Harlow album, right?
Ugh. Is it not amazing?
I haven't listened to it yet. I need to. Yeah.
He dropped so many names, like
Yeah.
references around the city of Louisville, and it
good
makes
stuff.
me happy.
Yeah.
I've only heard cuts of it, but I like the music. It's good stuff there.
Yeah.
So, unless you all
I'm
know
waiting for
something
him
we
to
don't.
drop a Coach Walls reference.
Wouldn't it be great if you stuttered when he did it?
Aw.
All right. Unless you know something we don't, we'll be back with you next week here on the Cardinal Couple Radio Hour podcast. Everybody have a great weekend and stay safe.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all. Go Cards.